The Nintendo 3DS came out in February of 2011, which is almost 15 years ago. Now, this is a later revision, the last entry into the 3DS lineup, the new 3DS XL, and honestly, I really don't think there's a gaming experience quite like this thing anymore. Dual screens, solid first-party titles, and with backwards compatibility, this thing felt personal. It didn't just feel like a slab of glass that could play the latest Mario Kart. It was special. There were a ton of color options, loads of exclusive titles, and so many weird ways that games took advantage of this hardware that made it unlike anything else on the market. Growing up, everyone had some form of 3DS when I was in school, and although it wasn't as popular as something like the Nintendo DS, it's the console that I have the most nostalgia towards. So rather than talk about new handhelds, I wanted to take a step back a bit and talk about the 3DS and see whether or not it's worth buying here in 2025, or it's just a trend that's being inflated by people buying back their childhood. Before we get into it though, a like and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. I just want to say thank you so much for the support that you guys have been showing me on the channel. We're almost at 70,000 subscribers, which is just insane to me, so thank you for the love. It means the absolute world. Anyways, I picked up one of these recently from a seller on eBay. My model is the Japanese LL version, which is cheaper and much easier to find in good condition. Mine actually came with the box and it quite literally looks brand new. I don't think it's actually ever been played, but the only caveat, I want to talk to you about my experience with owning the 3DS and whether or not it's something that I would actually recommend. The Nintendo 3DS has 2,288 games in its catalog in the United States, and granted, a lot of that is shovelware, but with games like Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, Animal Crossing New Leaf, Super Mario 3D Land, and Fire Emblem Awakening, it's no wonder why there's so much nostalgia attached to the 3DS with these massive franchises. Personally, I really like the Pokemon games. I do nearly own every single 3DS version physically, which is something that I don't know if I should be proud of or if I should just let everyone make fun of me, but I like this franchise. I've just been having a lot of fun going through and replaying titles and even experiencing some for the first time on the Nintendo 3DS. Pokemon Ultra Sun, for example, has sort of sparked this new interest for me in the Pokemon franchise, and it's made me want to go back and experience other titles like Black Version 2 and Diamond. Since most of my time spent in recent years on Pokemon has been with Sword and Shield and Scarlet Violet on the Nintendo Switch. And while I do enjoy these titles and I do like this franchise, let's be real here, the Nintendo Switch lineup for Pokemon games has nothing on the DS and 3DS versions. And when it comes to Pokemon Black 2 and Diamond on the Nintendo 3DS, I'm actually able to play these DS versions that I already own physically on the console thanks to backwards compatibility. Personally, I have no issues with modding your console or backing up your games, but when it comes to Pokemon, what's nice about actually owning these games physically is the cartridge actually saves the data. So all of the work that I've put into something like Black 2 or Diamond, I can hold on to for quite literally the rest of my life, and it's not tied to a console storage. It makes progressing in these games feel like you're actually collecting Pokemon, something that the Switch completely missed the mark with for me personally, with that save data being on the console. But after going back and playing some titles, I found it quite shocking how well the hardware has actually held up. Don't get me wrong, the 3DS was not a mind-blowingly powerful console when it released, but I found myself being way more interested in playing on the 3DS over something like the PS5 or the Switch 2, because rather than having the best looking visuals or smoothest frame rates, games actually had character. I was getting way more invested into this thing than I really expected to. To be honest, I only really bought this thing with the intention of having it on a shelf, just as like a novelty thing that I might tinker with every once in a while, because I do collect handhelds. I have quite a bunch, but the 3DS quickly became my main console. Whether I just had a few minutes while I was waiting for a video to render or an hour in bed at night, I'd pick this thing up over literally anything else that I own. And recently I went on a road trip to Cape Cod, and rather than bring the Switch 2, which is the new shiny console that I really expected to bring with me, I decided to just bring the Nintendo 3DS. There's actually a few reasons for this though, and it's made me kind of have this weird revelation, at least when it comes to gaming handhelds recently. The Switch 2 is a handheld console, but it's kind of like a hybrid first. If I want to take this thing around with me, I do need a case or a backpack, and it does take up a lot of room. Even the Switch Lite, I need something to put it in to protect the analog sticks from being inside my backpack and causing stick drift. So while these are handheld devices, you could hold them in your hand, they're not necessarily portable by any means, and that changes things quite a bit. The Nintendo 3DS though, especially the smaller models, it's easy to shove in a pocket or a zipper in your jacket, and it makes carrying this thing around no less of a burden than any smartphone. Especially with the clamshell design that covers up the inner screens and the circle pad, it's something that I find myself just subconsciously taking with me when I know I'll have a chance to play something. Especially lately, I found it really hard to commit to very large games as I don't have much free time, and with the 3DS, I found it perfect for those short burst sessions where I could just open it up, wake it up from sleep, and do a few things and put it right away. I've also found the battery to be insanely good considering how old this device is. It actually outlasts my Switch 2 by a considerable amount, and if I play Nintendo DS titles on here, it lasts a lot longer. This is nice because I don't feel like I need to bring the charger with me, especially because it's a proprietary charger. Thank you, Nintendo. And even just bringing around one of those could be quite annoying, especially if I've misplaced it. So it's nice to not really have that battery anxiety with the 3DS. However, there are a couple of downsides with this console that are pretty important if you are considering trying to get your hands on one. Number one, the eShop no longer exists. There's no way to purchase new titles in the eShop. You could still re-download titles that you've owned previously, but this means that you're limited to physical games, and they can be really expensive secondhand, especially from our opinion, aren't the best way to play, especially since the new models have a secondary C-stick, which can be used for camera controls or aiming in other titles. Personally, if you can, I would shoot for the new 3DS LL like I have here, and do the work yourself to unlock it, because you can almost guarantee a mint system, and you do still have all of eBay's buyer protection if the device isn't as listed. Now, additionally, if you can find a new Nintendo 2DS LL system, that is also a good option. It's basically a cheaper version of the new Nintendo 3DS XL, minus the whole 3D thing, which in my opinion is a gimmick, at least in my adulthood, because it causes insane headaches. But these will have the largest screens, the fastest processors, and will allow you to play the entire lineup since there were console exclusives for the new models. But the new Nintendo 3DS, for example, is a super premium feeling handheld, which is quite wild coming from Nintendo. It has really tactile feeling buttons, a very sturdy build, and it feels really dense in the hands, and that's why I said earlier it is held up for sure. This was like the big kid version of the 3DS at the time, and it still feels like a grown-up handheld, even for today's standards. That being said, if you're interested in playing the original DS games on the Nintendo 3DS, the larger XL systems might not actually be the best fit for you. The way the game is being blown up and scaled to fit the 3DS XL definitely causes a noticeable hit to the quality and makes it look really soft. But I've sunk a few hours into Pokemon Black 2 with the 3DS XL, and I've got used to it. I still prefer playing it on the 3DS XL over something like the Nintendo DS Lite, mainly because it's way more comfortable and it just feels better in the hand. But for sure, if I wanted like a pixel perfect representation of the game that I was playing, I would just play it on the Nintendo DS Lite. But let's wind back for a second here. Is the Nintendo 3DS worth it in 2025? Look, I think that if this is something that you've been contemplating for whatever reason, you'll have a blast with it. They're just going to become harder to find and be more expensive as the years go on, which is really unfortunate. But don't be afraid to look at things like Facebook Marketplace and try to score yourself a deal. Additionally, flea markets are a good choice. You could get lucky at a thrift store, but garage sales is where honestly I think you'll have the best bet if you want to score one for a cheap price. You don't have to pay market prices like you do on eBay, but eBay does guarantee you at least some form of protection, and at the end of the day, you at least see images of what you're looking at before you decide to buy it. So it might be worth it for that additional cost. But I absolutely love this thing, and I really can't recommend it enough. Whether this is your first DS or you've owned one before, there's seriously something here to play for everyone. And as always, if you made it through the video, a like and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. And before you leave, dropping a turtle emoji down in the comments below lets me know who all the real ones are and who stayed here until the end. Anyways, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.